Have you ever wondered how a family of 9 could go from living in a 2,400 square foot home to a 200 square foot box on wheels? Well, wonder no more, because in this video we're going to share the backstory of how we first decided to become a full-time traveling family, and we're also going to share our 3 top tips on how you can survive the purge and pack phase. Hi, if we're meeting for the first time, I'm Ellen.
And I'm Rick.
And we're the Marrsians, and we're glad you decided to take a look at this video. We're excited to share the backstory of how we first decided to become a full-time traveling family. And we also want to give you 3 of our top tips that maybe you might not see in other places. You know, we did some research of our own when we were getting ready to do this, and there were some things that we felt were lacking after we went through this process, so we want to share those with you today. The backstory of how we first started this is very similar to a lot of stories in our lives where I say something sarcastic or out of frustration and someone overhears me and provides an option, says something that makes me go, and that's what happened in this case. Back in 2014, toward the end of the year, we had just gone through the process of adopting 4 children into our family. And we already had 3 biological children by this time, and there was this overwhelming sense that people still looked at our 4 children as if they were foster children, and it became almost a daily frustration for us. I know people didn't intentionally mean to make us feel this way, but it was just a lot of conversations, lots of interactions with people where we really just felt overwhelmed that people were not yet seeing them as our children, as Mars kids. And one day I was walking through our church office and I made a comment. I said, I wish we could just disappear for like a year until enough people would forget that they were ever adopted. And it was really cool because one of the assistants at the church overheard me and she said, well, you could become work campers. And I thought, wow, what's a work camper? And she explained that there's this process where you can work in exchange for a place to stay while you camp and travel. And that idea was really appealing to me. I've always loved travel. I was in the travel industry for almost 15 years. And when she said that, of course, I started to think like how cool that would be to travel with my family. And I started talking to Rick about it, and I thought, wow, this is great. We can be a traveling, homeschooling family. We can lead this like new revolution. We can be pioneers. We could just lead this incredible movement of people who take their families out on the road and travel and see sights and learn from, seeing history. And the more I did my research, I realized that we would not be those pioneers because there were thousands of families already doing it. But it was still very interesting to us, and we didn't stop thinking about it. As a matter of fact, that assistant at the church actually gave us the movie RV that Robin Williams was in. And so we watched that, and then we started kind of getting our kids excited about the idea of travel, even though there's a lot of things in RV we probably wouldn't want to have happen. But that was for a couple of years. We just kept talking about it, and someday, and someday, and someday. And what I think we realized was what was holding us back was, more than anything, was fear. We found lots of reasons or excuses on why we couldn't or shouldn't go out on the road. And the more I think back on it now, I think we had fears that were holding us back. Fear of the unknown, fear of other people's opinions, FOPO, if you didn't know that terminology, and just the fear of like what it would be like to not be in a 9-to-5 routine, in a solid place to live. Those kind of things maybe were in the back of our mind. I don't know that we necessarily talked about it initially, but then over those few years, things just started to move in a direction where I really wanted to discuss it more. And in the summer of 2018, when my sister's cancer came back for a second time, and she was dealing with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, that kind of woke me up a little bit to the fragileness of life and how I didn't want anything to pass me by. And so I was actually traveling during that summer for work, and I found myself at one point in a state park in Oregon where there were all these beautiful waterfalls, and I literally spent the entire day by myself. And just like a lot of my business trips, I was thinking to myself, my family should be here, because there was no reason they couldn't be there enjoying the sights and the sounds and the beauty and all the waterfalls and just the peace and calm feeling of being out in nature. And I wanted so badly for my family to be there. And I called Rick and I basically said what we had been saying all along was, hey, it's time. I think it's time. I think we need to do this. And by the time I got home, I remember when I got in the car from that trip to Oregon, and I got in the car, actually before I got home, you called, we talked, and he said, can I turn in my notice at work? And at the same time, I'm thinking about traveling. And so maybe you want to share a little bit about what was going on in your head at that point, why you would bring that up.
Well, I was just at a place where I wasn't enjoying my job anymore. I mean, I've done my job for many years, and I've always enjoyed it and liked to do it. But I was at a place where I wasn't there anymore. I didn't enjoy going to work every day. I was done. I needed to do something else. And then when this all came about, we're like, well, I mean, if there's a time for me to quit my job, this would be the perfect time, because then I can get something else on the road, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, I think the timing just really worked out really well for us, because I was done where I was. I wanted to quit before we were ready to go already.
Right. It was God's timing, definitely God's timing. And so what we had realized, what we had come to realize, and we knew this even before, but we just never really discussed it, was that Rick would go off every day to a job that he wasn't necessarily happy about. He didn't feel that that was where he was supposed to be. And he would go away from us for sometimes 60, 70 hours a week just to pay the bills on a big box, to hold all this stuff that we just didn't have time to play with. We had a great situation, lived in a beautiful community. There were 9 of us in a house for 10 years, and we were very stable. And I think we were almost too stable. We were too comfortable. And so as we started to discuss this, we decided that we were going to make this happen. And when I came home and he said that, it was time for us to start reaching out. And so part of these 3 tips that we want to share with you guys, what we want to stress is these are not what we typically found when we were doing our research about how to do this. You know, there's 10 ways to downsize and 3 steps to do this, but a lot of people didn't cover the emotional side to what happens when you make this decision for yourself and 7 children and your spouse, obviously. And so we wanted to share with you our first tip. The first of the 3 is ask for help. From everything from us contacting our real estate friend who had always walked through these kind of transactions with us in the past, and having him say, yeah, I've been waiting on this for years. You know, you guys have talked about this for years, which was true. And to my friends who came over and helped me pack in the midst of the emotions of it. We're not stuff people, but we had a lot of stuff. I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, you know, every page that came home from school that we didn't toss out, art projects, you know, photo albums, camera equipment, all kinds of things. And so when we first started this purge process, I found myself to be extremely emotional about it. I would sit down in the middle of a room and just start crying. And I think, again, it was more of the fear of what was going to happen. I would wake up in the middle of the night and question like our sanity, and what are we going to do to our children by taking them away from, you know, the things that they know to be their life, you know. When our friends stepped in and they became our cheerleaders, that was really important. We don't need anyone's approval, obviously, if God's leading us in a direction. But it's very much like when I run a race and there are people on the sidelines cheering you on, you can do this, you got this. We had that in our friends and our support. And we also had friends who were already out on the road doing this. And so my friend Carrie and I would Marco Polo back and forth, and she would tell me things to expect or things I should do. That was very helpful. And then my friends Atelka and Mandy and Faith, they came over and helped pack when it was too much for me to even deal with emotionally. And that would always make me question whether or not we were doing the right thing. Why was I having all these emotions? But I tie emotions to everything. I tie emotion to a pen. It doesn't matter, like, oh, maybe I signed something special with this pen. And that's what I was dealing with. So first step for us would be, we would recommend that you talk to people that you trust their opinion. You know they'll tell you if you're crazy, or they'll tell you if you're, they think you're doing what you are meant to do. And so ask for help. Number one, ask for help. Number two is have a system. So if you have a system in place, even if you're having a bad day and you know everything is set up and ready to go when you need to purge a room, it's there. You're not having to think about it. You're not having to set it up. It's kind of like doing videos. If you have to set everything up every time, it's very difficult. It's hard to get into the movement of action. So we had kind of a 4-part system that went from room to room. And I would recommend, as part of this, is that you go one room at a time. You focus on one child's room, take care of it. Go to the next room, take care of it. Because if you move around too much, stuff gets missed.
We would have 4 bins. A bin for stuff that was going in the RV, a bin that they were going to save for storage, stuff that that's had a lot of memories for the kids or for us, a bin for storage, a bin that we would be donating, and then a bin of stuff that we're actually getting rid of.
Trash. Things that nobody really could recycle.
So there was 4 bins, so everything went through that process. And then also have a place to put it all for us as well. With the stuff that was going into the RV first, we had a storage underneath our stairs, and that's where we kept it all. We kept until we, of course, ran out of room.
No, with the garage.
Right, the
push
garage
things out
too.
To the garage
too. But have a place to put all that stuff as you go room by room. That's a big deal. It keeps you organized. It keeps you, to me, motivated to keep going. From room to room, and it just it made it a lot simpler for us. At least for me.
And the thing for me was, those systems could be handled by anybody. I didn't have to oversee it. I didn't have to manage it. I didn't have to tell people when to do what. Again, the emotional side of me, though, when I would see them throwing things away, mamas, forewarning, if you see your children throw away things that are emotionally connected to your heart, it will drive you crazy. So our kids were really good at this. They were really good. Like, we had put it in 4 little categories, and their minds can handle this even at their young ages. And I remember one day I walked by, so they have the trash can for the trash, and I walked by, and the trash can was full. And I'm not talking about I'm talking like a 50-gallon big outdoor trash can full of stuff. And I see this little toy that my oldest daughter had gotten at the circus when she was little, like her first circus visit, and I lost it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're throwing that away. And I wanted to take it. And Rick said, step away from the trash can. Step back, step away, don't touch the things that they've already decided. And they were able to let go because they weren't emotionally attached to things. So those kind of situations happen. So just be forewarned, they happen, and be ready. Like, you can say in your mind, oh yeah, the Mars family, they went through this. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to stop what you're doing necessarily. It could be a red flag, but for me, it was more of the fear of the unknown. The fear of, what if one day she misses that particular toy, which she's not going to. She probably doesn't even remember it. She might hear this video and remember it. But yeah, so that's part 2. Have a system so that you can move through the rooms and get it done, especially on the days when you're emotional and you don't want to do anything. This is one of those things, like, here we go, let's make it happen. Number 3 is to manage your emotions. And the way that, there's a couple of ways that we do this. For me, personally, I think I had the hardest time emotionally than most people. Everyone else was had kind of gotten to the point, maybe my oldest daughter, but most everyone was just excited, right, for what's going to come. For me, I was more fearful, even though this was my idea initially. Like, I didn't even know what a work camper was, and then all of a sudden I'm going to lead a revolution, and then I'm just, okay, let's just go out and see the country. Well, if you can learn to manage your emotions and cast a vision for the future, you'll be amazed at what could happen. And the way that I did that was a lot of prayer and asking people to point me back to where my belief system is. And I always teach this. I have a class where I teach about trusting God in the process of change or improvement or whatever it is. In this case, our downsizing. Trust God in the process. And I found that a lot of this fear was me not trusting that he was moving us towards something really amazing. The fact that our house sold so quickly, the fact that everything came together. We're going to talk in a separate video about how we even found our RV, which is an incredible story. And all of these things were coming together, but I had the fear of unknown that was overwhelming me. And so what I learned to do is ask for help, get those people involved, talk me through it, trusting that God was going to do something really amazing. He already was, but also keeping my eye on the future. When I would think about how cool it was going to be to show my children some of the amazing sights and sounds and smells and tastes of our country, that seemed to pull me through. You have anything you want to share?
And don't get me wrong, I was just as scared as she was. I mean, I probably didn't show it as much as she did, or I wasn't as emotional as she was, but it was the same thing. I mean, you can't help but to have that fear of the unknown and what's going to happen. Are we going to mess up our kids or whatever? You're always going through these things in your mind. But like she said, what it comes down to is having that faith and that trust that God will get you through it. And with us, it was always, hey, he opens his door, we walk through it. We keep walking through these doors if he opens them for us.
Right.
And he makes it pretty clear for us usually. And same thing as if he shuts the door, then we know, hey, we need to re-examine this or whatever. But still, we're human and we're going to have that fear, and it's always hard to get past that. But you get your tribe or your friends, your supporters, and it makes it a little bit easier, and it gets easier as you go on.
Right. The more times you have the opportunity to choose that. Yep. And so if you haven't figured it out, our primary focus is to encourage the people who choose to subscribe to this channel. We want to encourage you to choose your faith over your fear. And that's going to look different for everyone. We are very aware that not everyone is going to have the same faith or belief system that we have. That's totally understandable. Fear doesn't have to win. Fear will hold you back if you allow it. And regardless of what you believe, I hope that you hear our hearts in this. We want you to choose faith over fear, because what happens is it's remarkable, and we're going to be sharing those stories with you guys. But we want to inspire you to do that. Whenever you have an opportunity, an option, or an obstacle that you need to overcome, that you would choose faith over fear. So as a bonus to what we're sharing today, we're just going to give you a couple of lessons, and they're pretty simple, and they're usually, people will go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then when you're in the midst of it, you don't ever expect this to be the case. And so first thing is, you're going to expect certain people in your life to be in favor of your dreams and your goals. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen that way. The people that you think are going to be your biggest cheerleaders may step back away from you when you decide to do something as crazy as go out on the road with your 7 children. And it's okay. It's totally okay. Because what happens is when someone steps out of your life, that makes room for the people who really want to be part of your tribe, your community, your whatever that may look like for you. So don't allow bitterness or resentment or frustration to take over when that happens, because that is going to happen. You're going to think someone is going to be on your side cheering you on, and it's not going to happen. But that will allow for another handful of people to step in and actually be your cheering squad.
Yeah, that's going to happen, and you have to realize that, okay, they're entitled to their opinion or whatnot, and then you need to move on, because like she said, somebody else will step in and fill that gap. You can't just dwell on that, because you were expecting them to cheer you on and be on your side, and next thing you know, they're not.
Right.
You just move on. And
so the second thing that you're going to learn in this process is that some people are going to, with the right motive, they're going to give you bad information. So you want to do your research. We probably did less research than most people, because I knew if I thought too much about it and too long about it, I might change my mind. But unknowingly, some people are going to give you bad information based on their experience, their situation. Maybe some of you don't deal with emotion. Maybe some of you already have a system set up. But sometimes there are people that will hear a message, and like, for example, when we started talking about how we're going to pull our van behind our RV, the majority of people, pretty much everyone, told us it's going to be around $1,200, roughly $1,200 to $1,500. So that's what we set aside, right? The problem was we didn't go too far in digging for the research until it was really too late. And that mistake cost us roughly $5,000. And we'll talk about that more in a separate video, because that's going to be something Rick will address. But I just want you to understand, people aren't giving you bad information on purpose. They're just giving you their information based on their situation. So if you hear of a certain travel topic or what have you, and you get out and you experience something different, just understand everyone's seeing things through the different perspective. Right. And number 3 is it's going to be hard. And whether you deal with emotions or you just deal with the logistics of getting all your stuff out of your house, whatever that may be, it's going to be hard. It's not the easiest thing. It was definitely not as easy as I was thinking it would be when I was dreaming of waterfalls and hiking with my family. I did not realize I was going to be sorting through Band-Aids and figuring out what goes in an RV. But you have to understand, when you're going through all of this, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. Once you get out on the road, now there are things we're going to share about on the road that are different too, but we just want you to understand it's going to be worth it. And if you trust God in the process, if you know He's doing something, that's where we found our peace and our rest and all of that. So we definitely want you, this is number 2 of like many videos that we're going to be sharing with you. And so we hope you will hit the like button down below if you got any type of value from this. Or subscribe to our channel, because we want you to be part of this community. When we go back out on round 2, which we mentioned in our previous video, when we go back out again, we want you to be part of it. We're going to have some great things we're doing with the community, and we want you to be a part of it. So we appreciate you hitting the subscribe button. So our question of the day for you guys is, have you ever dreamed of going out and being a full-time traveling family? If you have, let us know in the comments below, because we definitely want to walk alongside you. We want to hear your experience. We want to know, maybe you are already doing this. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe you just hopped onto this video because you wanted to hear another perspective of it. So we're going to give you lots of opportunities to learn about this process, to learn what to do and maybe what not to do. And we look forward to having you guys as part of our community. So take care, and we will see you on the next video. Thank you.